Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to Conversations in Pop Culture, where I have with me Lisa Ortiz, who has been voice acting for ever, is the nice way how to put it, and has played a variety of characters, including Lena Inverse from Slayers, Amy Rose from Sonic X, several characters on Yu-Gi-Oh!, and is sort of the secret sauce of Pokemon right now. So welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you. I like that. I like secret sauce. I've never been referred to as that before, but I like it. I like it. I'm going to use that from now on.
Yeah, oh, please steal it. I encourage steal it. I didn't trademark it yet, so it's all yours. It's all yours. So, obviously, having said that, we're going to talk a lot about Pokemon, but I do want to talk about a few of your roles before Pokemon, and we get into that. And where I think we should start is with Slayers, as you were Lena. And Lena is something else, for lack of a better word. She likes money, she's a very powerful sorceress, she likes treasure, and she tends to cause damage in a comedical way. So
It's the things that you do.
So I would imagine that voicing that character must have been a lot of fun. But how did that even come about? Because that was one of your earlier roles.
Yeah, that was actually it was a lot of fun. That was one of the first. It was one of the first things that I had sort of come in. I think I had already recorded Lotus War at that point, so I had done Deedlit, and I got called in for the audition. And I remember doing it at the time, and it was just audition. I walked in, I did it, and I was as soon as they showed me it and they played me what she was, I was like, oh my gosh, I love this person. And because she's smart, she's funny, to me, she's like very like vaudeville, like she's very like, hey, what's going on? And so yes, I remember going in, I did the audition, and I was like, okay, well, we'll see what happens. That's probably not going to be a thing. And then it was, and it was one of the most fun projects that I've worked on. And I was really lucky that I got to come back, and there were other things going on. But yeah, so that was right early on. I started just auditioning.
And there's a lot going on in Slayers, and we see a lot of maturity. And one of the things is that through the individual seasons, we see some maturity. And then what was that like getting called back from season 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 and really getting to build out this character? Because we see Lena make choices and mature and risk the entire world for her best friend in some ways. And that's a great little mini arc in that entire thing. And you're like, is the world going to end here? So what was that like really getting to tell that story? Because when we look at anime and we even look at television now, sometimes shows don't get to finish that story, or sometimes the plot has to go beyond and we kind of miss a side arc of that. And with Slayers, we got to see that story play out.
I really dug the thing that, like I said, with Slayers, it's exactly what you're just saying. I dug that you had these like lighter episodes, you had these very comic things, and then you did have this. You got to see her multi-layered. You got to see her with these arcs. You got to have very very serious moments like with Shabernado and all sorts of other things that sort of happened. And but you still, it was kind of, to me, it's very
Light.
bump. Yeah, well,
Light is a good word.
light, but it's also very like I admit I put things in terms of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, just work with me. But where you have these like one-off light episodes where you have these great things, but you also do have this like this that deepness and actually being able to go into it. So for me, it was really cool to be able to kind of go into meet with her, to like be able to have moments like that, have real relationships with these people that you sort of see going back and forth, but kind of like how you are in regular life. Like you have those deep moments with the people you're close to, and then sometimes you just sort of act like idiots together, which I think is very cool. I don't know if that answers the question, but hopefully it
Oh,
does.
that works. And one of the things that I like about Slayer, and I think it led to Slayer's success, is that there was an amazing cast with Slayers. And I know that voice acting, if people don't know this, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's very much a lonely thing in the booth where the director is there, maybe the sound engineer is there, maybe an assistant is there, and maybe there's 3 or 4 people at the most for most things. And so you didn't really get to see your castmates, but that talent was still there. And it's really something that I think lends itself to the show. So what is that like to get to work on a show that has amazing talent, and you were all coming in at the same time. Slayers was happening, which is even crazier because looking back 18 years is where we're looking back down memory lane here. But even looking back, so what is that like?
It was really interesting. I think one of the things you get, like a lot of us, we were, like you said, we were starting off in this field, but I was coming from, at that time, more of a strictly theater background. So I was used to working with people on stage and having people to react and go off of. So it was kind of weird for me getting used to the fact that you were coming into the studio, and sometimes, especially with Lena, when it was yours, you have so many lines in a show. There was nothing there, nobody. But what was cool though is that you got trained, you had the image, so you could kind of figure out what you were doing there, and you also had so a lot of times you're working off of the Japanese. Like, I was responding. After a while, I got to know who the other actors were. And a lot of those other actors that I wound up working to, a lot of them were theater trained, or they were doing things on film. They were doing other stuff. So I think we were all sort of working that same way. And, early on, it was actually really cool because after a while, then you finally met them. I didn't meet a lot of people until much later. I will always remember, because I was a noob, I just came in, I did a lot of stage. I was like, okay, I'm talking to myself in a room and I'm trying to react to the things that are there, but I was having so much fun. So it was kind of like, this was like a dream job that I didn't know I would be able to do. And I'll always remember like meeting Eric Stewart in the elevator. Like that was a moment for me because we had played off of each other for a long time. And then I remember getting in there and he was doing an album, Blue Dressed as Black. Oh, he's going to kill me because I didn't remember it. I can't not remember the name of it. But he was like dressed head to toe, like in black and in leather, and his little pork pie hat. And he's like, hey, what's up? And I was like, oh, you're Gallery. Okay. I'm like, you're different than I thought. And so it was a weird thing. But it was fun. And it's different. Like, responding to, I was used to stage, you're still responding, but you're responding to the image and you're responding to the lucky times when you're able to have other cast members in there. And after a while, people would sometimes like leave, stuff in there. And we had great directors too. Like, we had Jim and we had, in the early ones later on, we also did as well, but we had Jim, we had Tony, we had a couple of people in there who were really good and they totally got it.
Yeah, and to even talk about that, because we are talking about this 18 years out, and Slayers is still relevant. It's relevant extremely for you. I know people who still remember that show. It was sort of me coming into anime. Slayers was being thrown out there, because when I came in was 1999 to really the 2004 range is when I started coming in, and a lot of my friends came in, and Slayers was front and present in that entire generation of coming in. So what is that like, that this is still relevant, it's still spoken about, people still know it, people are still responding to it and watching it to some degree?
I mean, first of all, I think it was just a really good show. I am very thankful that I came in, because it is sort of like a classic, sort of like cult classic-y kind of thing with there, because it does hold up. It does hold up because of the cast, it does hold up because of all of that, but it's also just a really great show. But also, I think, and this is the thing, at the time, there was a switch. I feel like right before I came in with a lot of those group of people, right at the time when the industry was just starting to sort of bring in, like when I say pros, I mean, it was going from subbing or fans and things like that, and having sort of people going in to actually reaching out and grabbing, a lot of talent that was working as actors or doing stuff. Because I think a lot of times in some places before that, they had grabbed people that they knew or they did this, and they had started to really streamline it in that way. But it's crazy. I've seen people who have, the weirdest thing was when I went to Texas, I did a convention. I went back 10 years later and I met a fan and their kid, who was now like 9, and they were watching Slayers together. And I was like, that's very strange to me, but I'm down with it. I'm cool with that. That's great. I'm looking forward to when my niece and nephew are sort of old enough that they will appreciate that. They just got to Sonic. So, and with Sonic, which I know we'll talk about later, but they just got to that. And since it was re-airing on Netflix, I was very, very happy about that. But yeah, it's really cool. I kind of dig that people have. I had with Slayers, which was a strange thing. Like even at the time, I had guys who were in the army who had been watching it. Like because you forget how young people are when they go in, and they were telling me like, "Hey, this kept me going while I was going through here." And then you had people who were just who were just a lot of people have told me, like you said, they were like, "This is one of the first shows that I watched, and it got me into anime." So that's cool. Strange, but it's cool. And yeah, I'm excited about it. And I still have like all of my Lena stuff all around. It's not unpacked in my home. You can only see my leopards right now, but I have Lena stuff all over. She is one of my favorites for many reasons. Yeah.
And now we got to talk about another show that carries just as much weight, in my opinion, as Slayers, and it kind of opened up a door for you, and that's Yu-Gi-Oh! And you are Serenity Wheeler in Yu-Gi-Oh! And this is a weird role because Serenity is not even, she's like a minor supporting character, but she is a motivation. Her presence is there. The whole reason why Joey is in Duelist Kingdom is for Serenity. The entire Dungeon Dice Monster arc was about her. When Joey goes evil, that had to do with her. And then she appears in a bunch of episodes at relevant times that motivate Joey. So clearly she's an instrumental part, at least for the first season and part of the second season of Yu-Gi-Oh! So what is that like to be in, I guess, a high-profile spot, for lack of a better word?
It's funny, like that. It's obviously I love Serenity, and later on she actually started to get to do some things. But you know, you have like the epic scene of where she's driving away in the car. We don't understand why Joey and she look totally differently, why they have different, clearly she grew up in a different boarding school. I don't know what happened. You know, they don't have the same accent. And Wayne Grayson always used to, like to this day, still calls me my sister Serenity. Like that's how he gets, it's like my sister Serenity. And but it's cool. It's funny because it is I know that it was such a strong part of Yu-Gi-Oh! And I had my pieces in there, but it's also, and my surgery, which was very expensive at the time. I feel like perhaps we spent too much money on it, because wasn't it like $2 million or so? It was like some like $1 million that I was like, this is a very expensive surgery. I was like, you gotta duel a long time to raise that money. I don't know what's going on here, but yeah, it was really cool. I love, and there's still so many people who do love that. I loved her character. I still would have loved for her to be able to do more, but I was happy to be a part of that, and I was super happy to be a part of Yugi in all the incarnations, but especially that first thing. It's very cool.
And to talk about the other ones, because it did open up that door. I'm a big Yu-Gi-Oh! Fan.
Yeah.
My favorite Yu-Gi-Oh! Is Yu-Gi-Oh! GX, and I get attacked for that. And I think that was a phenomenal show. And you played a few characters. You played Mindy, Linda, Yasmin, and you also played the elemental hero Brasillatrix. And I think I said that right. And that's, I think, more of a supporting role, because Brasillatrix is in a lot of episodes. It's kind of one of Jaden's call cards, for lack of a better word. And his entire thing and in his deck, and is a go-to monster to play. So what was that like? And there's some cool episodes with those monsters.
I mean, we're still going back on some of those, like doing the monsters, because at that time also we were in 4Kids, so we were rotating between a lot of different studios from different shows going on in there. That was always fun. It was fun being able to still be a part, to be able to play those different things. And I personally, I love creatures and monsters and all sorts of stuff and doing things like that. So that was a lot of fun. But I got more tied up when you're doing those kind of things. You're tied up more in battles than you are in plot things. The characters are, but the creatures are not. So that's the one side of that, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, and that kind of leads us into, I think, what everybody wants to know about. There's two things everybody wants to know about, and the first one is Sonic X, because you're Amy Rose, and everybody knows Amy Rose. Everybody loves Amy except Sonic.
Very upsetting.
And so, how did that come up? Because you were in the show, you were in the video games, and how did that all come about? Because that's an extremely iconic character. There's a lot of history. There's the comic side, there's the show side, there's the video game side. Sega is very protective of their work and trusts very few people with their work. And so, what was that entire experience like? Because Sonic X is fascinating and it's an amazing show.
That was Sonic X was a lot of fun. It was the same kind of thing. We had the auditions for it. We went in. There were times later on when we were doing the video games that we did have, the team from Japan had come down and done things like that. But it's funny because that was when, and it was directed by Andy Reynolds. I think at the time it was a little bit harder for me. It was a little more. It took me a little bit of time to wrap myself around her. Vocally, I did. We went in, we did it, and I loved that. But she had such these cool like mood swings and cuteness, and so working on that was always that. It was in the beginning. It was always like I'm like I gotta sort out what she's doing. Don't understand you, Amy. What are you doing? And then I was like, oh, I get you that. That's great. So that's fun. But it's very cool to have been it's hard to say 'cause you're like, it was cool doing that, but it was a lot of fun. Amy was, again, one of my favorites. She was spunky. She was there. Yes, she was constantly chasing Sonic. Yes, she had this sort of like back and forth attitude, but that's kind of my jam. That's sort of what I love is this sort of like, because and I say this, it's like a Lena-ism. It's not the same thing, but you have the swing. She's like totally fine and she's really great. And then she flips and then she comes back. So, and that was some of the joy of doing her, but she was good. And once again, that was a great cast. Jason and I, who's Sonic in there, he and I are still really good friends to this day. And, it was very cool kind of working with all of the people who were there at the time doing it. Yeah. And it's so much fun that it's on again. I was so happy. Also, this is one of those things. My nephew, my niece and nephew are into it. They started watching it. They started watching it online first, but now it's on Netflix. And my nephew is autistic, and he, for some reason, loved Sonic so much, so he would watch it all the time. So I went to visit them out in Texas, and they had it on in the back, and I was like, hey, oh my gosh. I'm like, that's me. That's Fifi. And they're like, and then they went back, and I was like, all right. I was like, you'll learn. Now they know it's me, so it's different. But yeah. But I love Amy.
And to even talk about that, because Sonic the Hedgehog had a movie that just came out recently, and the movie did very well, and there's talks about doing a sequel with that, and that's not a secret, so nobody's going to get in any trouble for saying that. And then the comics are doing very well, and so clearly there is massive popularity. And it was popular back then as well, back when it first came out. I think it came out in 2005 and was around for 3 seasons. And so what is that like that this is still popular and that it really has never left? The video games are popular and they always sell and people love Sonic the Hedgehog and people fondly remember this stuff. My friends and me watch Sonic X and we remember certain episodes. So what is that like for you, looking back, much like Slayers and even Yu-Gi-Oh?
It's very cool. I still remember a lot of things. So being a part of, I feel like I've been really blessed and very lucky in a lot of things with stuff that I started. Because there's a lot of stuff, and I'm sure we'll talk about more of that soon. But things that I came on that started when I was there, and they're still going. The franchise at least is still going strong. And to be able to do that and to know that like stuff that you've worked on is still relevant, that was a part of people's lives. Like I remember it's strange to me sometimes because like I'll talk to people and I'm like, oh, blah, 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 like we're having a conversation. And then all of a sudden they're like, oh yeah, I watched this when I was like, because I grew up watching that. And I was like, I cannot make that. This is strange to me now. Now it's strange because it's been, I'm like, you're a grown human. And I'm still, I can't tell the passage of time, but it's really cool. I was so excited when the Sonic movie came out. It was so much fun. It was very cool to get to watch and to get to see. And like, obviously like coming, it's a fun thing, like seeing that, seeing other stuff that I've watched, seeing Pokemon, like going to other countries or other places or traveling and seeing them on the wall or seeing stuff like that, and knowing that you were a part, you had fun, and people still people are, that's what's cool to me, is also because it's still around, there are still people who are watching it for the first time, which is kind of crazy to me. Yeah.
And even to add more to this is that you did some video game work for them as well on Sonic. And so those video games, because Sonic X reached a certain amount of people, and then the video games reached a whole different bunch of people. And obviously there's crossover. But what is that like, that people know you're Amy Rose from video games and not even so much from Sonic X? Because I was first introduced to the video games before Sonic X came.
Yes.
And so it's very interesting for me. And certain games, you know, I know you were in Sonic and the Secret Rings. I think you were in the Sonic and Mario Olympics. I think I can say that. I think that one, right?
I know which one you're talking about. I'm not sure. I have to double, triple. There's some things also, like, I have to double, triple, and check. I'm like, what?
But you were in several of them. We can leave it at that.
Several of them, yes.
So what was that experience like, both from being in the video games and it reaching a variety of different people as well as video game work? Because it's very different than traditional or dubbing or ADR work.
Yeah, I am. Like I said, I knew of Sonic first through the video games. Like that was my knowledge of it before I had auditioned for it. So that was kind of cool. It was very cool to have that. The process was a little bit different because you were doing a little more prelay. So that, like, now there's been so much stuff that I've worked on that I'm used to that. But at the time it was different. I remember having I forget which one they came in. We would have the animation was up, but you didn't have necessarily mouths because they were animating stuff to us. And I remember like a back and forth being in the studio, and one of the creators, like one of the producers from Japan, you know, was giving sort of like his motivation of what it was to the translator to tell to me. And he clearly liked my voice, what I was doing. And then he came out and he got down on, he like did an Amy impression, but part of doing that was he got down like on his knees so he would be short and little. And then he did his best Amy voice to tell me what he wanted in the scene. And I was like, you just incorporated the part. That's fantastic. But that was fun. And it was fun to have more of that stuff over there. It's weird because it's like, at this point, I kind of am amazed, but I also take for granted because there are these things and they're part of the culture. And it's very strange sometimes to assimilate that with your everyday, except for the fact that I have Amy Rose stuff all over my apartment too. So that stays in its own section.
Well, I think we're going to get even more deeper into the culture because, as I stated, you're kind of the secret sauce of Pokemon right now, and feel free to steal that.
I am. You don't think so? I'm going to write it down, putting that on my cards.
So, you're kind of one of the originals with Pokemon, I think, also, and you're one of the last originals who's been on the show for its entirety. 25, 26 seasons, I want to say.
We are actually technically we're in the 23rd. In the 23rd season of it, but it's been that long. Yes, it was one of the first things that I had a part on. I actually was not in the original casting call of it, but I came on in the first season. So I didn't get to audition for a bunch of the roles, but I came in early in the episodes and have been on there on and off since. Yeah.
So how'd you get on, and how did that entire thing come about? Because Pokemon, for those who just to throw this out there, nobody knew if it was going to work or not.
Oh,
by definition, nobody knew.
And Pokemon was special because nobody knew it was going to work. They sort of looked at things, because like 4Kids at the time looked at things a little bit differently. So this was one of the first things that was like broadcast. I mean, Sonic was, but Pokemon was its own thing. Like I said, I wasn't on the I wasn't in the original cast call for it, but by that time I was working in a bunch of studios. So they were like, oh, hey, so they got me in on the next things that were happening, but nobody knew it was going to work. A lot of people didn't know. We didn't know Now it's hard for me to even imagine back to then because I take for granted so much. Pokemon is such a part of my life that I take for granted all of these things. You take for granted the battles, the throwing, the everything, like creatures. It's like a world that I literally cannot remember a time before Pokemon in my brain. But there was, and at the time, I know a lot of people were like, "What is this? What are we doing? What is this animation? What are we doing? What's happening here?" But yeah, nobody knew. We had no idea that it would carry on and it would go on as long as it has. That it would be such like a part of so many people's lives and whatnot. And it's that more than that. Even more than because Sonic was everywhere, like when the movie came out and it was on the walls and it was there and you could talk about it. Everybody knows Sonic, but Pokemon is like everywhere on the street, if that makes sense. Like I went to Mexico and I saw a couple of little things Sonic, but I saw like Pokemon stuff on the street and people were talking in Spanish. People were talking about Pokemon. Like that's what makes it such a different sort of beast, you know.
And we're going to dive into it because we have to.
Let's talk about it. Hey, I'm happy to share some knowledge that I have since I have a little bit of knowledge.
So, first 3 seasons are fascinating because Pokemon finding its footing, games are coming out, and anime is out there, toys are out there. It's the new thing on the block, and people are going crazy over it. And you had an interesting role for those first 3 seasons where you were some additional voices, but you also were Sabrina, the gym leader, and she was in the game. And you also, in Johto, you were Luca, which had sort of, I guess, a story with Lugia, I think, which was one of those top-tier Pokemon that everybody wanted. And you also got to play Wendy, who was a Team Rocket leader / person / like higher up or grunt. I'm trying to find the word here. And Pokemon was just getting bigger and bigger and bigger in these first 3 seasons. So what was that like? Because you were still doing additional voice work and you were doing a bunch of other characters, but you also got some name characters in there that appeared in the games. And so that to me is fascinating for the first 3 seasons with you.
In the beginning, even though it was blowing up, weren't really conscious because we went in, we did the stuff in there, we recorded, and maybe we would watch things on TV or not. I remember it was such a weird thing. I used to go out to Icon on Long Island because that was like the local convention.
I know where that is. I've been there. Mm-hmm.
That was the local con. So but I just went to it. I went and just checked it out. It wasn't like I was going necessarily to cons at the time. So I went to this con and I had met some people who had watched the show. And I remember when Pokemon came out, that was the first time that I got a call at my home that I was like, I don't know who this person is. And they were like, we just wanted to wish you, we found your number. And I was like, oh, and that was the day I became unlisted. But I was like, oh, this is strange. This is different, bigger than other stuff that I've done. But it wasn't until I think the movie, which was a big thing, that we saw, like we had that was the first time that I had been to a premiere of something. But it was weird because we had our premiere in New York, but there was like a celebrity premiere that was like of people who were bringing their kids and everything like that in LA, which was very, very strange. And we, heard about people like who wanted to be part, who wanted to do things, and it was very strange. But for me at the time, I think I was just starting. I don't know even that I had started on the convention scene yet, but at the time, I was just blown away or thrilled that I had a job that was paying me. That was what I had wanted to do. I mean, I had studied and trained to be an actor. I had studied and trained to be like on stage or to do film, and I had always loved animation, but I didn't know that it was. I was like And there wasn't there. That was what was going on sort of in New York at the time. But I had no idea that I was like going to be able to do that. So it was sort of, I was still sort of like in my like dreamy, like this is so cool kind of thing. But I didn't know, and I didn't in the beginning. I didn't play the games in the beginning. I do now, but at the time I wasn't. Like I wasn't playing as much of those. Like I was familiar with them and I knew them, but I wasn't gaming at the time.
Yeah, I think you said it really well. Where I think the movie was that turning point. Where I think the movie was that moment where it was on TV, movie came out. I don't know the exact day or year the movie came out, but early on. And then I think that's when the turning point hit. I even think with the games as well, where it really solidified and it said, okay, Pokemon is now not just a show that's popular, it's an actual cultural phenomenon. And
Yeah.
it's one of those things that's a game changer that's maybe not here for a generation, but it is now as we found out. But what was that entire thing like when that shifted, and then you're now on to season 4 or 5, where the movie happened and
It,
the Johto and Hoenn League
you,
started.
at the time when we were doing it, obviously you're going now. There's the thing that I like about the show and that I try to keep when I'm going in is that we did have like a community that was going on there. So you did have actors that were brought in. They always found new people, but they always kind of kept people coming along too in there. So you had a little bit of a stable of people that were going on, which I loved. Um, it was strange. I mean, I I will say, and I know we'll get to this later. The strangeness of knowing that you were in something that was that huge at the first time, the only thing that, and this is a weird thing that I have been able to be part of something that was rivaled twice, was when Pokemon Go came out. And when we were in the streets, like that feeling was a similar to feeling of to the strangeness of seeing something that you were a part of being like everywhere around you. Like it's a weird feeling. But going on into it, I was just happy. We were happy to still be part of it. We were happy to still be working on it. It was starting to make sense. Like now you knew it was old hat. You knew how to do your battles and all those things. And it was really fun. And also you started to realize that the things that you did, which I still now more than ever, I have conversations with people about details of this show that I'm like, excuse me, I have to have a very in-depth conversation and argue with this 10-year-old over here. This is very important to me. I'm like, we have to discuss some things. All right. Um, but it's very cool. And I think that's also why, like, through the whole thing, a lot of people say that they grew up, watching Pokemon, and I feel like I grew up in Pokemon because that was sort of like my transition into the real world of acting. So Pokemon is like a huge, huge part of my life and a huge, huge part of my development too, as like an adult person, which is maybe strange, but I joke even. I think I was in a session the other day that I joked, and I'm like, I'm gonna be like 90 and not remember anything in the world, and I'm still gonna be able to like call out people's Pokemon and their pronunciations and all sorts of things and talk about stuff. I'll be like, I'll have forgotten everything else in the universe, and I'll still be like, no, it's a fire type. Stop.
And to continue talking about Pokemon, so now we're, I guess, in the Hoenn League here, and you got two more interesting characters, Flannery, and she's the fire Pokemon gym leader in that one, and she's like punk rockish. She's sort of spunky. She's sort of fiery, for lack of a better word, and
Yeah.
she's a fun character to watch, and
Mhm.
there's some fun interactions with Ash in there and the team and all the things surrounding her. So what was that like to be that gym leader and really get that out? Because it kind of goes back to Slayers a little bit, where it's that attitude and that character, and I think you brought her to life really well.
Thanks. She is. I love. That is a that like she speaks to like of that a part of me that is very much lives in there. So I had a lot of fun with that. A little spunky or a little more attitude. She's got a little more press on her. She made me happy. A lot of the other people as well. I mean, I'm going to backtrack over and talk about Sabrina for a second, because that was always a weird thing. I love her, and I love her intensity and like her quietness of everything that's there. But also, like, I will never forget the controversy around her episode, because that was the first one that people were having fits. They had to redo guidelines on stuff for that. Flannery's just fun. She's funky. She's good. She's got she's got a lot of attitude, and very confident. And she is I and great hair. I dig her. I dig her a lot, and I dug her arc and her like stuff that she had. So.
And then sort of on the opposite side. So the opposite side of that was, and I think you played this character as well in this season, was Agatha, who is sort of from the Kento Elite Four to some degree in the games. And she's like more ghost Pokemon oriented. I think. I could be wrong on this.
I'm trying to think. I have to look at that as far as it is possible, and I may be on there. I'm trying to think of her image of her. I have. Yes, I'm going to say, but I'm going to triple check. Like, Liz, stop. Now suddenly everybody's like, you don't know what trainer. There was a lot of trainers.
There's so many Pokemon people you play.
Her face. I have the faces in my head.
And while you're looking at that, you also were in a bunch of movies around the same time. And one of them was you were Rebecca in Pokemon Destiny, Deox. And I loved Deoxys, I think is the correct Pokemon name for that, right?
Deoxys, yes.
So
I have to check my Pokedex. I will tell you that I have to check my Pokedex on some things.
So what was that like? Because at that point, that Pokemon's the space Pokemon, and that one is fascinating, and things are sort of happening, and the movies to me in Pokemon, and this is just my opinion, are almost one-off adventures that are kind of just fun, and you see a lot of fun stuff, and you see a lot of Pokemon that you normally wouldn't see, and you see interactions that you normally wouldn't see, and sometimes there's more of a greater conflict, for lack of a better word here, and so I think it's really interesting. So what was that like, being in that movie and getting to play this character?
So Yeah, let me say that. First, I'm going to say that I don't know if you can see this, but my search for that made me the 5 billionth search that Google has ever had. And I just got confetti and streamers on my phone. So I was the 5 billionth search to check and see that detail. I did not actually get the search result, but I got the congratulations for searching for 5 billion.
Do you still have it up? Because move it into the center so we don't see it.
Yeah, look. I was the 5 billion search. Congratulations, you're today's lucky user. Our last reward was given to Brad Jenkins. Every 5 billion search is reached. We proclaim a lucky user to receive a reward and reset the counter. This is behind. Okay, so I'm gonna choose. I get a blue cup award. I'm sorry, I have to do this right now.
This is fantastic. It's live and you're doing it. This is amazing. The 5 billionth search on Google has been live. You're going to be sending this to them too?
If this brings me to a website that I have to like scam and then fill out a whole bunch of questionnaires, I'm going to complain right here live. My reward has been activated. Let's see. Okay.
This is fantastic.
It's apparently time to get excited. I don't know what this means, but I'm about this. Okay. It's going to make me register and do things. So I'm just going to, like, what do I have to do? I'm just going to continue. I'm female. All right. Great work. It just said, all right, we're going to table this as the 5 billionth user. It's going to make me it's a scam. It's asking me to do a survey. Anything that asks you to do a survey is a scam, but I got confetti, so I'm happy about it. We were talking about the movies. So all right. So one of the things about the movies that I really do dig is exactly what you said, is that they get a chance to tell more of a cinematic story, and they did this a lot early on, and they did it later on. You have these little time capsule things, you have these events, you have some characters. It's usually, depending on which seasons you are in, because they did not do this in Sun and Moon. In earlier seasons, sometimes you had the traveling party were part of the movie, and they did that for a lot of them. Sun and Moon, I think, is one of the only ones that didn't have that, because we wound up doing things like I Choose You and the other stuff, and we sort of went back to things because of the anniversary. But those were fun, and the nice thing about that, especially early, for I think like the first few, I think maybe Annie and Oakley were the last ones. We actually screened in theaters. You went in, you got tickets, and it was very fun to be able to see this thing that now you gotten used to on your TV. I'm looking at my TV, which is where I'm turning, and seeing it in like large. They put more time into, they gave more detailed animation. They got very cinematic with stuff, and even the whole thing tended to be lusher and more full, and that was really really cool stuff to be part of on that as well.
Also, you got the free cards, and those are cool. I remember that stuff in the theater when you went. That was great. The promo cards, fantastic. I still have some of that.
I still have some of those. I still have, I put up, talking about stuff you get, I still have in my closet, it's one of the things that I moved with, that I need to grab it and pull it out now, I still have it, this was the first movie, they gave us jackets that have Pokemon on the back, and it looks like a varsity jacket, but it's like this varsity jacket that has Pokemon on the back, and it says the first movie, and it's super cool. So yeah, but you got the card packs. I still have some of those. I sort of am a little bit of a pack rat with those things. Like I keep them. I still have the very first Pokemon card book that I had, which was cards that I had gotten from there that they gave me. So I still have some of those. I don't think I had any valuable cards, but they are original, so I still hold on to them. But yeah, you got those special card packs, and then they started later on with the ones that were big. You had a lot of codes and stuff. I dug it. I dug the event of it too, and I dug that it was a cool place because this is the other thing, is a lot of times we do this in quiet, and until I started going and doing conventions, or unless we went to go see something that was on a screen, people are watching everything at home. So that there's a lot of people, that things are going on, but you don't really interact with them. So, and people weren't as social media-y as they are now, so it wasn't like you have the interaction that you get in things here. So that was sort of how we saw when we got to go in and watch stuff on screen. Yeah.
And now I want to skip a little bit into the future with Pokemon.
Let's do it. Yeah, there's a lot of time to go through.
And so we're gonna skip Pokemon Chronicles and Pokemon Diamond and Pearl. I love both of those. Don't get me wrong. But I do want to talk about Pokemon Black and White, because you got to voice this cute little thing, and I'm going to get the name wrong. I already know it. I think it's an Oshawott.
Oshawott, yes!
And I'm not sure what an Oshawott is, but I know it's one of the starters. And it's adorable, and it's cute, and it's watery. You always choose the water Pokemon. It's the best out of the bunch in the games. I'm just saying. Yeah. Even though I like Trico, and that's a different error, and I know it's a different error, but not the point.
Throwing down.
Not the point here. So, how did this all come about, and what was it like being Ash's Oshawott on top of that?
Okay, so we auditioned for the starters as well. So you do creature auditions. So by that time you had done I had done creature auditions. I had done creatures, but that was the first time that I had that I got to be a starter. And I remember it was a very strange thing when we did the audition. When I got cast, I was like, what am I gonna do? All I can say is my name, and what is this gonna be? And then it had this crazy awesome personality that and you'll see with me a lot of things go back to vaudeville. We had a little Jim Durante in there for things that he did, with the ways that he sort of talked and stuff that he did, and it was its personality is just really, really cool. It was so that was one of my most fun things to do. And and being with Ash, being part of things and sort of going around and being able to just be this little thing that had so much fun. It was funny, was powerful, was that, and I know it's everybody's starters and things that they play, but that was one of my most favorite things to play. I totally dug it. Yeah.
And because it's a starter, obviously it's in the game, it's more front and center, and in many ways that must make you feel good that you got to do something in Pokemon that isn't that is not necessarily a human, but is at least front and center, for lack of a better word. And it's kind of a cool thing in Pokemon. You know, I had Tara Sands on my other podcast, and she plays Bulbasaur, and everybody knows that. And so there's an entire generation that knows Oshawott, much like I know Squirtle, Charmander, and Bulbasaur, generation I grew up with. So what is that like for you? Because fast forward 15 years, you say, oh yeah, I remember my first starter was Oshawott.
Yeah, it's much like, and Tara, you know, obviously I know Tara very well, and talk about this. My Oshawott is very funny because there are people who know the starter, and they may not know even that I was a trainer in anything. They won't know some of the other roles, but they'll. Oh, sorry, I just accidentally kicked my cat, and it just I stretched out my leg, and my cat was like, "Stop talking about the Pokemon," and jumped off the sofa. But sorry, babes. It's very cool because a lot of people do know that. A lot of people will come, you know, at conventions, people will bring me things or bring like Oshawott out. And it's just, and having it there are so many people who know more and we can talk about it and things like that. But I loved that Oshawott is one of just like a great thing, and it's very interesting because some of the other creatures that people play, some of the other Pokemon, if it's people will know them, they have their favorites, there's always those things, but having the experience of being that starter who's such a huge part of it is cool. And I have a bunch of Oshawott in my home as well. And I might have 5, but some were given to me, some were my own. I have them. I can't, you know, I have many Oshawott. What can I say?
And with Oshawott, you got to voice Oshawott, or your voice was used in Super Smash Bros. And that's a legendary game. Everybody who plays video games, no matter what system you use or what you grew up on, knows that. So what is that like? Because that is something that not everybody gets to achieve. And it is very much an honor, and it is very much a status symbol to some degree. And it's kind of a, you know, an exclusive club, we're going to label it. That's what I'm looking for. It's a good way to put it.
It's very, very cool. I have played is that I've been to tournaments where I have friends who are gamers who have played, and that's been a weirder thing because they will be more excited about that than anything else and actually we worked with one of the Pokemon is so present that it's hard to imagine like talking to people who don't know anything at all about it. But there are we have one of the engineers, one of the guys who I'm working with, who is now was not familiar with the show, missed the window of it when they were a kid, didn't do anything, but their knowledge of it was they knew Smash Brothers, they knew Super Smash, they knew all of that, so that was how we bonded over it. So that's what I know, and that's how we got into talking about Poke. Yeah. That is cool, and I love watching people play, either myself or people who are far better than me. I love to game. I love playing. I'm okay. I do not pretend. Like, I love the games that I love. I play them. I play because I love them and they're great. But when I see people who are really hardcore, I love seeing them. Mm-hmm.
So I have to ask, because you're not a gamer, but when you game a little bit, did you play Black and White, and did you choose Oshawott as your Pokemon, and did you evolve Oshawott?
Okay, so...
I hate to put you on the spot. I know it's controversial, right?
I did play. I did not evolve. I did not. I'm not going to say that I went through finished. I don't always. I okay. When I was doing, I also worked on and I directed a bunch of projects on Game Loft. On doing a bunch of things, and I used to talk to the developers over there, and they were all super avid gamers. And one of the things they said is like, it's frustrating because I am spending so much time now making the games or doing the things that I don't have the time to actually play things. And so that was always, so I would start to play. I did not evolve. I'm not going to evolve Oshawott. I mean, I am the evolution. I'm the first, I'm actually, I also did Samurott as well. And so I do the evolutions of Oshawott. But Oshawott's super cute. What? And what and Samurott. But I have 5 Oshawott. Did I tell you? Do I have 5 Duat and Samurott? No, I have 5 Oshawotts.
and we're gonna back out of Oshawott, and I do want to talk about Pokemon X and Y and X and Y Z, because that was sort of the changing of the guard in many ways, where this was the time that the voice director in Pokemon was changing, and you kind of stepped up and got that role more towards, I think, X, Y, and Z. So what was that like? And, I don't want to go super details, but what was it like assuming that role and taking over? Because there's been many amazing voice directors throughout Pokemon's history. And you were taking the helm of the ship.
I had actually on Black and White was the first time that I directed on the project. I was the second director. Like there was the main director, they did things, but when there was rollover or spinoff, I was doing other stuff. But I did some direction that was on there. So and then I actually wound up leaving. I was not at Duet for a while. I left, and then when that changed, they had Teresa changed. She came in and she was great. She sort of like started up on over there. I stepped away for a while, and then they had sort of the guard change, and they asked me to come back. So, which I loved. Stepping in and being able to sort of having the lead direction on it, and at the time the only one who was there. Is really, for lack of a better word, really cool. It's humbling to me because I get to bring all this history and all this time that I've had working on this. I get to bring that to the production. I get to bring the stuff that I remembered in the beginning when I started. I get to, I can keep loyal stated there. I know the arc of the way things have gone, and I get to, play with this thing that, like I said to you, in my ways, I grew up with. I grew up on, in, actually, not on, in. And that's really, really cool. Going in, doing all this, I at that point I had been directing, I had directed on other projects before. I started in a couple of different studios. I had, like I said, I had second directed on it, but sort of doing everything, doing casting, working on those, being able to watch the episodes down. It's something that I totally love. I dig. I pay a lot of attention to the history. I have great producers and people who I work with who obviously know everything backwards and forwards. And for me, it's an honor, and it's something that I also take very seriously. It's also, like, it sounds stupid, but it's like fun, if that makes sense. Also, XY was different than a lot of the other things because XY, Ash grew up a bit. Ash got not necessarily his age stayed there, but you got a little more
mature.
Yeah, you got a little more mature, and that was a really cool thing. One of the cool things is being able to see how it shifted, and then obviously I'm sure we'll talk about that when it shifted from the matureness of what XY was, and then going into probably telling me that I'm the 5,000th person and quick fill out my form. You go there. Fill out your form. But yeah, it was cool. And, it was interesting working with Sarah on that. getting to go to those places that Ash didn't normally go to was really cool. You sort of had like different maturity stuff. You saw a lot of stuff that sometimes would have been treated more comically, like when he had issues, when he was having problems with Greninja, or he like had anger issues, or was like really trying to deal with stuff that a lot of times are more teen in their feeling. That was a really fun, and it was a very cool thing to sort of be able to do in the show. I really did dig. I really did dig, and I really did like a lot of that arc also, especially the way that it ended. Mm-hmm.
So I want to table that. I'm about to ask a semi-stupid question.
Okay.
But it might not be so dumb when I ask it. So you come into this voice director role, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. I'm going to get back to the Ash thing in 1 second. What is a voice director? Because I've had Jeff Nimoy on, and he does a lot of voice directing, and he did stuff back in the day. But there are people who are going to be watching this saying, "What the hell's a voice director?" And so I think very basic, because I go to cons and I present at anime cons, and when I say what a voice director does, people don't know. And I don't think people truly can appreciate what you've done and what you were just saying and coming into it and the history you bring in unless they know what a voice director does.
That's fair. Voice directors.
It's a weird question, I know.
Yeah, no. But ideally, like what you're doing is much what a stage director would do, where you have the story, you have all of that. You are making sure that the story is emotionally being told the way that it should be. You're making sure that in voice acting especially, you're guiding the actors. A lot of times actors come in, they're cold, it's cold reads, they're going in there, and you are making sure that everybody's done one-on-one, right? You're making sure that the characters are emotionally doing what they're doing, that they're talking to one another, that they're hitting these beats, these comic things, and that you're fleshing things out. There are going to be times when people just come in and sort of do, and you roll with that. But that's what the voice director's job is. The voice director's job is to interpret the story to the actors and make sure you're getting the performances that come out and match what's going on. So that's what you're doing. It's a thing between the actors. It's a collaborative process.
And the reason why I asked this is because we were speaking about Ash's maturity, and I forget who's playing Ash right now. I know Veronica Taylor played Ash, and then there was a change, and now I think
Sarah Natacheni is playing it now. Yes,
and she's been doing it for a while at this point.
Yeah, she's been doing it for at least 12 years. Yes.
So what was that like when you have, I don't want to say immature Ash, but Ash in a different state, and now we're in X, Y, and Z, and Ash is now acting more like a champion, and acting more like an adult trainer, and acting more like sort of like Gary Oak when he went through his, maturity level. And so what is that like? Because you have to sort of coach that and make sure your actress is on par with where the show is going. And that's very much what a voice director does.
And like Sarah and I have a very good working relationship, especially now we've worked together so long. You have semiotics, and she has great instincts in there. But yeah, you getting to go to places that you couldn't go to before. And I know when I'm gonna take you on this, and so you understand where I'm coming from. And what I take a lot of responsibility for when we do this. Like this is what I'm talking about, like having this legacy of this thing that we've been talking about, having these whole legacy things. Being one of my good friends who I grew up with, he told me a story of his daughter. Okay, so he comes in, and it was a funny story. We're laughing. He's like, his daughter was like 5, and he comes home, and she is in the other room, And all of a sudden, he just hears his daughter sobbing uncontrollably. Okay. And he's like, he runs in. He's like, honey, what's going on? Are you okay? What's going on? Are you, is everything okay? And his daughter looks up and is like, Ash lost. He lost the competition. He lost the thing. And it was one of the finals. He lost. And she's crying. And he's like, oh, okay. So no, it's okay because he tried really hard. And, so next time. But she's like crying. And now we laugh and think that that's like super, more like, this is adorable. This is super cute. But at the same time, I'm very aware that like she's learning a lesson. She's very emotionally invested in it, much like we're all very emotionally invested in things, especially though when we're kids. And, I know people of all ages watch, but I also know that like kids especially do. And so I keep that in mind. When you get to Ash, when he has these things in XY, you're not just speaking like talking to this girl who's like 5 over there. We're also talking to like that complex world where people sort of get to be tweens and teenagers and like we're struggling through our own emotions with stuff like that. And to be able to put that layer into this show that so many people think is light, it kind of goes back to that Lena Inverse thing where you have these light things and then you have these moments where you get to be real, to get to be like complex and layered with Ash, with this character that's been around for so long. It was so great. And Sarah loved it. She's wonderful. Everybody got to sort of do that. I mean, there are moments of that in other points along the show, but because they got very real, because they got very mature in there, it was a thing. And we spent a lot of time on some of those moments to make sure that we were, and Sarah was like right there with me. We spent a lot of time on some of that stuff to be clear, like, when he was like, he's not just mad. That's not why he's mad. He's upset about this. He's frustrated about this feeling. And also you're like very much like how people are. You're like, he can't communicate his emotions. And that's one of the things that's frustrating, or he's not paying attention. And I like those moments in the show. I like moments, and there are, I can't talk about it, but there's some really cool stuff that's coming up as well. I like those moments where you see the personality conflicts, and sometimes you see them not just between like Ash, but you see them with the relationship that he has with his Pokemon, and like how they're learning and going off and stuff. And so that to be able to like to hit those things and try and make them honest and still within the realm of like animation, that's important to me. I take the world very seriously. Okay. One of my friends made fun of me because even when we get into Pokemon episodes, they're like, you kind of know exactly what they're thinking. I'm like, you kind of have to. They have personalities and little lives in there. Like clearly they are reacting to it. They're not just making sounds. They're not just doing this thing. And that is something that I do take seriously. There are so many people who watch this. There are so many people who it's important to. And there are so many people who value this. And also there are so many people learning lessons from, like you don't think about it. And this is one of those things talking on earlier, what is it like to have a part of something? Sometimes you're just entertaining, but you also know there's a lot of people who are like my friend's daughter who are learning that it's okay. Like you can be upset about failing, you can do things like that, but you can also still try. And like those lessons of friendship and everything are very, very real. And so I take it seriously, but I spend time with it.
And to talk about that a little bit, because we get those lessons, and you were there for season 1. And I think it's safe to say that children in today's age, in 2020, to some degree, are faster learners. They're maturing at a much faster rate. And so to see this and see this level of maturity happen and him handle it and be a little bit tuned up on the dial a little bit more in the story, and for you to take the time out of that and actually make sure that that is captured, I think speaks very much of you as a voice director understanding how something needs to be interpreted and where it needs to be. Because I think the average, and I don't know the average age of a Pokemon watcher, but I think a 9-year-old is a fair estimation. and that's what I think. I think a 9-year-old versus when I was 9 years old is very different. Where I think that I was a dumber 9-year-old, partially because of society and social media and a variety of other factors. And I think as society we're getting smarter, and so I think that's something that is really well done on your end of taking that and making sure you're conveying it and taking the time to actually make sure that it sounds real and that it's treated like a real show and not some just off the mill anime.
Yeah, I mean, my thing, and this I will. It's funny because I had that moment with some of the cast people that I work with now, even like working with them in Xeno and stuff. It's like, it's like, this is Pokemon. You're taking all the time with it. I'm like, well, my thing is this is also, first of all, I think it may be safer to say that because of all the information that we have, you may have been a more...
I was a dumber 9-year-old.
I'm not going to say dumber. Let's say, but you may have been a more naive 9-year-old, if that makes sense. You may have been, you didn't have to like do all these different things. You didn't have all this stuff coming at you all the time. Because I honestly believe, and this is my personal philosophy, but also I think is that kids are way smarter than we give them credit for. They may not be able to express things in the way. They may still be developing. They're still forming their values and their views of the world. But they know what's going on. That's why that is one of the things that I think you'll see more in storylines now, but you do see in a lot of anime in general, is that, you see issues of dealing with people who don't have family. Like Pokemon has always been really weird because until Sun and Moon last season, you didn't really have a whole family unit sticking around. And I think that's one of the things that made that such a wonderful and emotional thing towards the end. But, because Ash kind of got his whole family unit sitting there together with him. It was a little more slice of lifey in there. But kids are smarter than kids are emotionally very, very smart, and they're much more aware and they're much more perceptive. And I think that you can feed them stuff that sort of, just comes off the thing, and that's totally cool. But that, I think, being honest with that kind of stuff and taking the time to make those moments and do those things, I think I believe, and I hope that it's true, is it resonates with people more, because when you have that in there, you can, even if you can't put your finger on it and you don't know what it is, it registers. It registers on an emotional level. That's what I think. That's how I approach it. And also, like I said, I was a very emotionally invested child, we will say. So I think that's important. I think it's a good thing. And I mean, people seem to respond to it, so I'm happy.
I think a lot of people respond to it, and I think a lot of the new generation appreciates it. Whether they can say it or not, I think it's going to have a good impact on them. And I think a lot of people like me, which were the old timers, and we're first gen, also very much when we watch this stuff, whether we're watching it ourselves, which might be me, I'm not confirming or denying,
yeah,
or yeah, I'm leaving it ambiguous there. Cough, cough. But I think it does sort of wrap things up, because one of the complaints about Pokemon is that Ash never gets older. It's a running joke in the community, and then same thing with him winning a championship too, and he finally won one. Finally. So just throwing it out there, and but I do want to talk about something that is sort of a voice director privilege. And you got to voice this character that was named Jesse and had sort of this interesting disguise. And then it sort of brought everything full circle, where it's the Slayer.
Oh, yes.
I was giving it to you. You were supposed to answer.
I was like, Jesse, but then I had a moment. Yes. Oh my goodness. Okay. So
pulling rank. You were pulling rank. Let's put it that way. It was a team decision, but yes, there was a little bit of rank. There was a little moment of it, and I remember when that first came, when the first season came, and we were doing this. There, I had the producers, Trish and Hillary. They're like, so
they're like, what do you think of the episode? And I was still finishing up my other episode. So I was like, oh, I skimmed through it. And I was like, oh, that's cool. I'm like, it's good. Looks good. I hadn't sat down and watched the whole thing. They're like, yeah. And I was like, what? Yeah, no, I was like, character. I'm like, it's good. I'm like, I'm going to get down and do it. They're like, okay. And then when I finally watched it, I was like, ah! To me, at the time, especially with everything going on in my life, I was, because I was playing another Megumi Hayashibara character at the time when I was doing Slayers, and like I said, I didn't audition for the meeting, but as soon as I saw Lena on screen, I was like, that's crazy. And yeah, Michelle was the same thing. There was a couple of other people in the cast who knew they were like, so, I remember Mark Swint was like, he's like, so you're gonna step in, right? And do the Lena. I'm like, we haven't made a decision yet. I'm like, cause it was just, that was one of those things where that was me, like with the worlds colliding. I was like, okay, I'm here. This is happening. That's there. And then Michelle also came in, and I was like, okay, I think I'm going to do that. I think it will be very fun. And then Michelle came in, and she was like, you have to. She's like, I can't. She's like, I can't. You're right there. I can't do this. And I was like, don't worry, we'll do it. And that was super fun. Yeah. And for me personally, like, sometimes you have, I get a little misty on there, but you have a couple of things. Sometimes things line up in such a weird way that it makes you feel like you got a little message that you're in the right place at the right time. Like the fact that came and was there right when I was sort of took over and had been in there and started onto this new thing. I was like, okay. Yeah.
That's called an Easter egg. And then people who are fans of Slayer and grew up watching Slayer and first off, watch the episode are going to get it, and then the fact that you're voicing her in that episode further confirms it, and it's just one of those things where it's almost an anime insider position, if that makes any sense. Not to mention behind the scenes what was going on with it, which once you know that story, which we kind of just told, it makes it even more of an Easter egg. So that's why we brought it up, because you did pull rank, and it's controversial, clearly.
To be, as ever, we were unanimous on our side about it, though. So it was meant as an Easter egg, and it was meant as one of those things, and for like a little wink. So.
And then I finally want to talk about something, and I know that you didn't have full decision on Pokemon coming to Netflix, and so I want to make that clear. But Pokemon is on Netflix. I think it's exclusively on Netflix for both the remake of the movie and now the next season. And
that's the Pokemon International. Those are their decisions. So those are I don't have.
But nonetheless, it's on Netflix, and that's a massive step. It's very cool. It's clearly a change of how things are being watched. I mean, just to throw some numbers out here, and I know I might be putting you in a slight controversial position to some degree.
I'll tell you.
But Avatar a few weeks ago was the #1 watch show on Netflix. So clearly there is a generation that is watching it, and new fans watching it. And then the old guard, which just came out, is in the top 10. Pokemon is on Netflix. The movie that dropped on Netflix, I think it dropped on Valentine's Day or the day after, was massive and was a huge hit. And so now we have this new season on there, and clearly it's reaching a whole new audience, and people are loving it. And I think Pokemon International is very much a step ahead. And so what is that like to you, that you're directing this next season and it's pretty much in the right spot where it's supposed to be for the future?
Yeah. It's for me, it doesn't change too much of how I approach things. It does change like the schedule of how things go, because obviously you've got like the batches of things going on. And I won't talk too much in detail about that because I don't
Yeah.
want to. I don't want to violate my NDAs.
No, nobody wants to know the details.
And no, exactly, nobody cares on that. But what's fun about it is that like we're not allowed to talk about episodes, and like even with the actors, like I'll remind people, you're not allowed to talk about episodes until they air. We can't talk about them until they air in the U.S. Okay, so even if they air somewhere else, we can't talk about them until they air in the U.S. And so for everybody to be able to talk about what we had been working on like the same day, like everybody, you know, can watch and sort of like look down and stuff like that. It's very cool. I'm very happy about it. For the first time also, like I did a Netflix watch party with my niece and nephew, and we watched through a couple, because I told you they're now, my niece is finally at the age where she is a Pokemon fan. She has cards, and she's very interested in what Pee has to do. She's like, you have Pokemon cards? I was like, yes, I do. And so, so we got together while they were in, I was in New York. My brother had come down for family stuff, and my niece and nephew were in Texas, and we put on Netflix watch party, and we watched it across the country together, and it was one of the coolest things we got to do. I was down with it.
And one of the things, because I'm on episode 3, the first person to admit that, is that there is a bunch of episodes that dropped all at once, which is a nice thing, because you actually get a chunk of it, which is awesome. And so I appreciate that on a Netflix level, and I just think it's fascinating, the distribution. And I know you can't talk about too much about this, but there's some more coming, right?
Yes. Well, yes, there's more. I don't think that's a secret. There are more.
So I just want to let people know that there's some more stuff coming. You know, what dropped is not the end. Is because
no, they do, and I think this is fair because I think this is enough. They do. Normally, like when we were in some places, we would do a couple of episodes at a time. You know, we would do an episode at a time, and it would release every week. And there are some places, I think in Canada, it still releases weekly. There's still other places that release it weekly. But yeah, we dropped the full first part of it. You still have the whole season is going to happen. Yeah, but you can binge the whole thing. I know many people who did. You can also, you know, stop and watch. But yeah, there'll be, you know, obviously there is stuff like the everybody got affected, obviously, by the quarantine, and everybody got affected by things that were going on. But we're still working. I'm working. I just was working, doing stuff like that. So we're still creating and doing stuff. So it will be there.
And I don't want to push you any further on this because I don't want to break your NDA. We spoke about it briefly before.
I will tell you if I cannot say things. I will be like, we'll see.
So I don't want to break your NDA. There's some more to come, but I do want to give you an opportunity to promote yourself. You know, what is your Twitter? Do you have a Facebook page? You got an Instagram? Any virtual cons you're doing? Because I know that's the next big thing that's coming out there. Yes,
I am. You can find me at Lisa Jam. So Lisa Lise Jam, LISALISE Jam. On Twitter, you can find me at Lisa Cult Jelly on Instagram. I am going to be doing stuff online and some like video and different things online. I have been deep in production, so I have not. When I have more virtual cons and things coming up, and you can find me on LisaOrtiz.com. I have a Lisa Ortiz Facebook page. LisaOrtiz.com actually will be up on Monday because I just spent a bunch of time redoing that. But you can always find me on Twitter, and I'll keep you posted on virtual cons and things that I'm doing as they come up. But yeah.
And I've been saying this to everybody at the end of every single one I've done, and the 45 I think that I've done so far of these, is that you definitely have to follow people on social media. You got to check out their website. You gotta like their posts. You know, it's if somebody's got a product or something doing or a virtual con, and you got something going on. You know, you gotta support indie and support people that you like in this industry in particular, because that shows a bunch of stuff. Both economically, obviously, I don't need to go explain putting money into people's pockets if you
Mhm.
like them, you know, increases what they're going to do. But even the social media, follow on Twitter, you know, a like, a heart on Twitter, a retweet is massive. Just commenting on somebody, say, oh, great job in Pokemon, really enjoyed it. You like somebody's Facebook page, check out their Instagram. It goes a long way. And if you can't afford right now to put money in somebody's pocket or buy something they're pushing out there, then you have to like their social media, unless you don't have electricity or internet. And if that's the case, A, I don't know how you're watching this, and B, contact me because I can help you. If that's the case,
Yeah.
contact me. I will help you personally. And we can talk through that problem. And this is the PSA of the day. So that's where we're going to leave it.
I am. I will add. I will add a little bit to this of the reality. That's great, and definitely I interact with a lot of the cast members online too. So you know, follow them and do all that. It's especially in this weird time right now. It's very helpful, and we love talking to you. You know, it's good. I like it. Tell me your thoughts. It's good.